So hey guys, this is your favorite the fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto had the supremacy of Dragon of Heaven. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Hey, everything is going to be alright, Naruto said with a smile. He was currently kneeling in front of a crying boy. The little boy had fallen and injured his leg. The boy was crying, and the mother was standing right behind the boy. Naruto just happened to be passing by and had noticed that. He could never ignore a child's crying or other people who need help. He held one hand over where the boy's knee was and held the other in front of his face. He closed his eyes and began to speak a few words softly. The boy's mother could tell right away that Naruto was praying. The way he held his hand in front of his face was the usual position when praying with only one hand. It was completely straight, as if one's hand were formed into a blade. Naruto had spiky golden blonde hair and blue eyes like the ocean itself. He had 6 exotic whisker marks on his face, and Naruto was currently wearing gray pants, a white long-sleeved shirt and brown shoes. The mother could sense something strange. It was as if an unknown and pleasant warmth emanated from Naruto. He and her son were enveloped in a golden light, and the wound on the child's leg slowly began to heal. She couldn't believe it. The wound her son had sustained a minute ago was beginning to close. He had big eyes, and all she could think about was a miracle. Naruto stopped speaking and opened his eyes while placing one hand on the boy's head and the other on his knee where he was leaning straight on it. The golden light that had surrounded the two of them a few seconds earlier was gone when Naruto stopped uttering soft words. "See, it's all right now, isn't it?" Naruto asked with a soft smile. The child nodded with a smile. A tear could still be seen in his eyes, but the child was no longer in pain. "Thank you, mister," said the child. Naruto stood up and helped the child to his feet. "Be careful from now on, okay?" Naruto asked while leaning forward a little so that he could get a better look at the child. The child nodded happily while looking at his mother. "Mom, the mister just made my injury go away. Is the mister a saint?" asked the child. "Thank you for helping my son," the mother said with a smile. She still didn't know what she had just seen. But thing was clear. She had just witnessed a real miracle. Naruto shook his head. "Please. I was happy to help," Naruto said. He waved at the two as they walked away. He smiled and lowered his hand while turning around. He started walking calmly again. It was a pleasant day, and since today was Friday, it was now the weekend. This meant that he could continue to write his book in peace and still do some training. Constantly improving one's own abilities was a must when living in a world full of supernatural beings as a normal human. Of course, there were enough humans who could take on many supernatural beings, and Naruto was one of them. Humans may had a general disadvantage in not being naturally stronger, but with enough training even a human could become very strong and hold their own against even the strongest of supernatural beings. Naruto enjoyed the calm that currently reigned in Kuo. He would go home soon, but before that his destination was somewhere else. He walked to the southern part of Kuo, smiling the whole time. Some people walked past Naruto and greeted him. He was well known around here because he often helped other people with ordinary things. Especially the older people around knew Naruto. He helped them with gardening, went for some shopping or other things. He didn't know it himself, but he was considered a saint by some. Some people knew of its ability to perform certain miracles, such as healing wounds. These people didn't tell anyone about it, at Naruto's request. "Naruto," said a man. "Oh, hello Kled," Naruto said. He walked to the picket fence of a house and shook Kled's hand. Kled had a family of his own and was an auto mechanic. Naruto had saved his daughter from some guys before, so the two knew each other. He had also caused Kled's ailing wife to be miraculously restored to health. "How are you, my boy?" asked Kled. Kled was 35 years old with short brown hair and green eyes. He usually wore a plain shirt and blue pants. He was one of those people who was satisfied with little. He didn't have particularly expensive clothes, although he could afford them. But his comfortable and not particularly expensive clothes were enough for him. He always said that his clothes just had to be comfortable. "I'm fine, thank you. How are you and your family?" Naruto asked. "Rukia is fine, as usual. Ever since you helped us, she never had any problems again. Cled said. Kikyo is fine too. Sometimes she asks me where you are. She'd love to walk around the mall with you again. Cled said. Rukia was his wife and Kikyo his daughter. The woman was Cled's age and Kikyo was 8 years old. I could come over again next week. Naruto said. I'm sure she'd be happy about that. Cled said with a smile. Then we'll do it like this. But unfortunately, I still have to do something and that's why I have to say goodbye. Say hello to your wife and daughter for me, Cled. I wish you all the best. Naruto said with a smile. His golden blonde hair was once again particularly emphasized by the sun's rays. Cled just nodded and watched Naruto walk towards the graveyard. Tragic what happened to Naruto's parents. And yet they were such kind people, thought Cled. Naruto's parents were named Minato and Kushina Uzumaki. Both were then members of the church in Tokyo. Naruto grew up in Tokyo and he also had a few friends there who he visited from time to time. But for 4 years he had been living here in Kuo and enjoyed his quiet life as a writer. He was 20 years old and was already a young adult. He has already published 3 books on different subjects. He had a good life here in Kuo. He knew many good-natured people and helped them. Here he could concentrate on his books in peace and quiet when he wasn't working out. Of course, he helped people as best he could. He knew about the devils in town, but they didn't hurt anyone. At least the devils who ruled this city. Naruto had often seen a devil come out of a human's house and then just use some magic to teleport himself away. It was no secret that people hired and paid for the services of devils. Be it money or other goods. Cled, Rukia, and Kikyo, for example, also used the services of devils from time to time. Naruto had nothing against saint devils or other supernatural beings in general. Every being, be it human, devil, fallen angel or any other being had a right to life. Naruto only had something against certain beings who murdered without reason, committed other oppressed or other atrocities. After a while, Naruto stood on a graveyard while the sun was slowly setting. The entire cemetery was drenched in a warm orange. It was a nice atmosphere to visit the dead parents. Naruto had something against a certain group of people, the members of the church who had murdered both of his parents. His parents had a similar view as Naruto when it came to other beings. Usually, devils and fallen angels were the main opponents of the church. But it had often been the case that Minato and Kushina had helped devils. The church eventually found out about it and that's why they had the two killed. At least a certain person in the church. Naruto was still trying to figure out who exactly ordered his parents' murder. He knelt down in front of both his parents' graves and placed a bouquet of flowers on the grave. He took a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket and took a cigarette out of the pack. He put the pack of cigarettes back in his pocket and then took the lighter out of his pocket. It wasn't exactly normal for anyone in church to smoke. But Naruto wasn't the part of the church in he was raised well by his parents and learned a lot from them. The cigarettes had helped him get over his parents' death. He found it satisfying every time he smoked a cigarette. It was a distraction for a brief moment and smoking always calmed him down and made him think more clearly. He was now doing it more out of habit than anything else, but he still liked to smoke. He lit the cigarette and then put the lighter back in his pocket. He took the cigarette between his index and middle fingers and drew on it once. He felt the familiar sensation in his throat from the cigarette. Smoke and sighed as he blew the smoke out into the world. He looked at the grave and just smiled. I haven't heard your voices for 3 years. I'm fine and continue to help people like you taught me, thought Naruto. He remembered all the hours Naruto trained with his father. His father had been a powerful exorcist known as the Yellow Flash. He was extremely fast, and many beings had feared him. He could use a special magic that would allow him to teleport instantly, plus raw magic manipulation. Unfortunately, Naruto didn't have the ability to use magic like both of his parents. But he had a different ability since he was born. He could perform miracles like healing wounds or creating holy water or creating holy barriers which were particularly effective against beings of darkness or of course exorcism. Naruto could use holy power in its purest form. He could also focus holy power into his fists, allowing him to deal extra damage to dark creatures. Naruto called this ability Holy Fist, which he invented himself. Of course, He could also surround other body parts with his holy aura and thus cause extra damage to beings of darkness. Through his training from an early age, he also had superhuman strength and speed. Due to his long training and his skills, he was able to survive against supernatural beings, and since it was mostly devils, he had to fight. His skills were even more effective. Naruto quietly smoked his cigarette, always looking at his parents' grave. He smiled the whole time, as usual, and yet he still felt that pain from back then. This pain because he was too late. Just because his parents didn't want to reveal the great secret of Naruto's abilities, they didn't tell him anything and had to fight many opponents alone. Naruto only noticed something of the fight when it was already over, and both of his parents were lying on the ground with fatal injuries. Naruto had of course tried to save both of his parents, but he was too late. Even as he ran to them, they died. He could only see them both kissing once before they both lost the sparkle in their eyes, and both died. An hour later, Naruto was walking the streets of Kuo with a cigarette in his mouth. There was always once a month when Naruto would visit his parents. That day he smoked more than usual. He stopped when he saw a nun. What is a nun doing here? As far as I know, the church in Kuo is no longer in official use, thought Naruto. He hadn't been there for ages, of course, but it was still weird. Why was there a nun in town with a big suitcase in both hands? I should make sure everything is okay with the nun, thought Naruto. He smiled and looked left and right before crossing the street. The nun looked around, apparently trying to get her bearings. He could tell right away that she wasn't from Japan. Naruto's parents weren't from Japan either. Minato came from Italy and Kushina from Germany. Both had met in Japan during a vacation and immediately fell in love with each other. That's why Naruto didn't look like a typical Japanese. He looked European and not Japanese, and the nun looked European too. Hello, do you need any help? Naruto asked. The nun got a little startled and turned around. She saw Naruto and gave him a confused look and then said, How was that? The nun asked. Italian. I see, she must be from Italy. No wonder she didn't understand me, thought Naruto. Naruto could speak more than just Japanese. He knew Japanese, Italian, English and German. Naruto replied in perfect Italian. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. You looked a bit lost, and I wanted to ask if you need help with something. Naruto asked with a warm smile. Oh, you speak Italian too, I'm so happy. Asia said with a smile. She was really lost and had already tried to ask someone for directions, but so far no one could understand her because she could only speak Italian. Yes. My father is from Italy. Naruto said. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. His smile seemed to radiate warmth, which made Asia feel so secure. She always felt this warmth and this security when she was praying. It was a beautiful feeling. It was as if she could feel the warmth of God momentarily. My name is Asia Argento. She smiled with an innocence rarely seen. People like Asia were rare in the world, and unfortunately many people just took advantage of people like Asia. Naruto just smiled. May I know why you're looking so lost right now? Naruto asked. Asia nodded. I got lost a bit. I came here to Japan from Italy to join the church here in Kuo. Asia explained. I understand. Would you like me to show you the way? Naruto asked with a smile. Although he smiled, the alarm bells went off. He knew full well that the church was no longer in official use, so Asia wasn't telling the whole truth. He believed her wanting to join the church. But there was more than she might have known. He had seen fallen angels around the past few weeks. It looks like some fallen angels have made their way into the church. That could still lead to problems, thought Naruto. If the fallen angels and the devils fought each other in the city, innocents could be caught in the crossfire. Asia smiled happily. That would help me a lot. I would be very grateful to you. Asia said. She was really radiant. Naruto could only imagine that Asia was being tricked. Such an innocent nun would never associate with fallen angels, at least not willingly. Okay, then give me your suitcase. I'll carry it for you, Naruto said. Asia was a full head shorter than Naruto, and although she was 17 years old, she was on the short side. Naruto could tell she was having trouble carrying that large brown suitcase. Oh, you really don't need that, Asia said, a little embarrassed. He shook his head and just smiled. Don't worry, I like doing it. As a man, I feel obliged to take a lady's luggage if it's heavy. Naruto said. Asia blushed a little and just nodded, a little embarrassed. When Naruto touched her hand, lightly as he took the suitcase from both hands, her eyes widened slightly. So far, she had only felt this warmth slightly, but in the brief moment she had felt it much more strongly. That warmth, that security, that feeling. As if God were standing in front of her personally. It was that feeling when she prayed, only much stronger. God. She said, a little off track. Naruto looked at her a little confused and now held the suitcase next to him. Are you okay, Asia? Naruto asked. Asia seemed to snap out of a trance when Naruto said her name. Huh, what happened? Asia asked, a bit confused. You were absent all of a sudden and didn't seem quite there. Are you okay? Naruto asked. Yes, Asia said. She was still a bit confused about what had just happened. Naruto smiled and said, then let's go. After all, the sun is already setting and we want to get to the church in the light, don't we? Asia smiled and nodded. Yes. They both walked away calmly, and Naruto just smiled. He enjoyed the peace that was around him, and as usual some people greeted him on the way to the church. You are well known, Naruto-san, Asia said with a smile. She could see right away that Naruto was very popular with the people here in Kuo. They all seemed to know him and to like him. Naruto just waved at a human and then he smiled at her. I have often helped people, so I know a few people here. Because of my work, I can afford that. Naruto said. That's so kind of you. You are a very nice person, Naruto-san. Asia said with a smile. My parents both went to church, and I learned a lot from them. Naruto said. Oh, your parents were part of the church? Asia asked, a bit surprised. Yes, they were part of the church in Tokyo. Naruto said. Are you a member of the church too? Asked Asia. No, I've never been an official member of the church. I always went to church with my parents, but I was never a member like you or my parents. Naruto said. Before Asia could ask anything again, they both heard a little boy. Naruto and Asia stopped and looked around. A little boy was on the ground holding his leg. Naruto and Asia ran straight to the boy, and just as Naruto was about to put the suitcase down to help the boy, Asia knelt in front of the boy and covered the boy's wound with both hands. Naruto felt that familiar feeling again. Like so many times before. There it is again. That feeling when someone uses a sacred gear, thought Naruto. He could sense when a sacred gear was being used. Near him for as long as he could remember. He didn't know himself why he could sense sacred gears. He just could, just like using his abilities. He just could, although no one else could use those abilities quite like Naruto. 2 rings appeared on Asia's ring fingers and started glowing green. Again, Naruto heard that voice in his head. Twilight healing. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked around. Whenever he felt and saw someone using a sacred gear, he heard a deep and soft voice in his head. This voice always said the name of the sacred gear, and right after that Naruto knew exactly what this sacred gear could do. Twilight healing. A sacred gear that can cast miracles to heal others. It's similar to my ability, but it works a little differently, thought Naruto. He works a miracle with praying. But the twilight healing didn't require praying. The twilight healing could heal others of any damage just like that. It was some of the most powerful sacred gear when it came to healing. It could also be the strongest in this category. Naruto just smiled as Asia healed the boy. Never in her life would such an innocent nun willingly associate with fallen angels. I guess I have to get involved. I can't allow Asia to be taken advantage of. Especially with her sacred gear, she is in even greater danger. It could well be that the fallen angel's only lured her here to Kuo because of her abilities, thought Naruto. A few minutes later they both walked side by side again and enjoyed the silence. Asia was happy that she could help someone again with her gift, which she had received from God. She was sure that one day she would get her big wish fulfilled. She would continue to believe in God and pray to him as usual. After a few minutes both of them could already see the church, which was on top of a hill and a bit outside of Kuo. The church still looked good, although officially it was no longer open. Of course, Asia didn't know about it, but that didn't matter so much. There she is already, Naruto said with a smile. A few minutes later both were pretty much there, but before they could walk the last few meters, a loud scream came from the detached house, which was also just outside of Kuo. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he recognized that voice right away. Lee. Naruto ran straight away, creating a cloud of dust. Asia had to put her hands in front of her face because otherwise she would have got some dust in her eyes. She looked in the direction of the house and started walking too. Asia couldn't even see Naruto anymore, even though she only held her hands in front of her eyes for 2 seconds. She just hoped that everything was okay with Naruto. He was the first person who could understand her here in Japan, and he was always so nice. In addition, she felt this warmth from him. She still couldn't explain it, but Naruto just made you feel comfortable. It was like having Goddess standing right in front of you or being right next to a sun. Naruto appeared out of nowhere in front of Asia, holding an unconscious woman in his arms. I'll explain everything to you, Asia, but please heal Lee first. She has suffered a serious wound in her abdomen and needs your help, Naruto said. Asia got a little startled when Naruto appeared out of nowhere in front of her, holding the woman in both hands. The woman had a deep flesh wound on her stomach and was panting heavily. Asia had to catch herself briefly before she just nodded, and Naruto turned around and after one step just disappeared again. Asia glanced at the spot where Naruto had just disappeared in a flickering motion, and then she concentrated on healing this injured woman. Naruto appeared in the house and looked at the devil who was about to eat Lee's husband. Naruto charged straight in, his right hand surrounded by golden aura. The devil was not a normal devil. It was one of those devils who had turned into a monster. Naruto still didn't understand why devils changed like that. Devils were actually just like humans, only with special abilities. They looked like humans, needed food, drink, sleep and all the other things that humans also needed to survive. Naruto hit the devil with his holy aura enhanced fist. The devil flew across the room and cried out in pain. The golden aura around his fist vanished, and at the same time he knelt in front of the man and held one hand over his chest. The man was as good as dead from his severe wounds, but he still had a sliver of life in him. The devil had flown through the wall and was lying outside the house, motionless. Naruto's single punch was enough to kill the devil. His holy fist was very effective against devils and especially against devils like this monster that ate humans. Naruto closed his eyes, put his other hand in front of his face and started to speak softly. The room was bathed in golden light, and solitary golden particles of light appeared around the injured man. Asia had just finished healing when she was startled when a dead devil flew through the wall and laid motionless on the right side of the house. Shortly thereafter, a golden light came from inside the house. Since Lee was fine again, Asia got up and ran to the house. She could feel it again. This warmth, as if God were walking directly on earth. She came very quickly to the room where furniture had been knocked over, where there were deep scars on the floor and wall, and of course the hole where the devil flew through. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw this spectacle. Naruto and the man were surrounded by golden aura and scattered particles of light surrounded the two. The golden light emanated from Naruto. No matter how shocked she was earlier by the experience of Naruto bringing her a badly injured woman or the sight of the hideous devil now lying dead outside the house, all worries just disappeared at the sight and the feeling that went with it. God, Asia said again, falling into a trance again. Naruto just kept kneeling in front of the man and kept talking quietly while the man's injuries healed. It wasn't as fast as Asia, but it was just as effective. After 2 minutes Naruto stopped speaking and opened his eyes. The golden light, particles of light and gold, an aura disappeared around Naruto and the man. Asia came out of her trance at the same time and looked around confused for a moment until she saw Naruto groping the man. Naruto couldn't understand one thing. Normally no devil should come near the church. Devils didn't avoid sacred ground like churches or shrines for nothing. Leah and her husband's house were very close to the church and should have been safe. Why did this devil still dare to break into this house and attack Lee and her husband? He would find out. Asia, I'll explain everything later. But now I have to ask you to go to church. I'll take care of Lee and her husband and everything else, Naruto said. He got up and turned to Asia. Asia just looked into Naruto's blue eyes while he looked at her seriously. Gone was the carefree smile. Naruto now had a serious expression on his face that few possessed. Asia just nodded. I'll go. But you have to promise me that you'll get in touch. I don't want anything to happen to you, Asia said. Naruto smiled slightly. I promise, when I'm done here, I'll come and see you at church. Naruto said. He accompanied Asia out of the house and then looked at Lee. He sighed with relief when he saw her. She was completely healed and seemed to be asleep. Naruto waved at Asia as she walked away. He pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and dialed a number. He glanced at the screen before hitting the call button. He held his phone to his ear and didn't have to wait long. Yes, it's me. I need your help, Naruto said. A male voice came from the person he knew from Tokyo. Naruto frowned. I know. I'll reciprocate. Don't worry, Naruto said. The female voice said a few words again and Naruto just listened. He was silent for a moment. I promise. I'll take his job, Naruto said. The voice said something else. Okay, see you soon, Naruto said and hung up. He sighed and went to Lee and picked her up. He couldn't cast magic. He could heal Lee and her husband's wounds, but he couldn't easily fix the chaos in the house. He needed help from someone from his past. This person could use magic and help him cover up this event. He brought Leah back into the house and then went to the dead devil outside the house. Naruto raised his hand and took his lighter out of his pocket. He bent down a bit and set fire to the devil's corpse. He took a few steps back and watched as the flame engulfed the devil's entire body and slowly turned him to ashes. After a few minutes, while the corpse was still burning, the sky changed. And a barrier was erected around the house. Naruto ignored this and just continued to watch the devil slowly turn to ash. Black feathers flew from the sky. Pitch black would describe the color of the colors better. Naruto looked over his shoulder and could see the fallen angel's long black hair. As usual, the black eyes hardly contained any emotions. So, what have you been up to for the last 2 years, Naruto? Asked the fallen angel. Naruto turned and looked her straight in the eyes. The fallen angel didn't have breasts as large as most. Her body wasn't as seductive as the bodies of other fallen angels, but she was very desirable within the Grigori faction. Her 6 black wings disappeared behind her back and her long black hair with a few spikes moved back and forth. Naruto watched as the entire chaos in the house gradually returned to normal. The fallen angel held up one arm and a blue magic circle was visible in front of her hand. He was glad that she had agreed to him. So, Lee and her husband could forget this incident. The fallen angel had already changed the memories of both of them. Now I have to take on the job, whether I want it or not, thought Naruto. After a few minutes everything was as before and then the fallen lowered her arm. She turned to Naruto and crossed her arms under her chest. Well, I'm still waiting for an answer, said the fallen one. Naruto looked into her black eyes and just smiled. You should already know the answer. I lived a peaceful life here and wrote my books. I do hope you haven't neglected your training, the fallen woman said in a serious voice. What do you think of me? Of course, I trained every single day, Naruto said. Have you mastered it then? Asked the fallen one. Naruto looked straight into her black eyes and narrowed his eyes. I've already told you I don't want to use this power until I have a choice. She frowned and huffed once. That was typical of her. She's always been a bit stubborn and cranky. At least that's how it seemed to most, and yet she was more popular than most female fallen angels in the Grigori faction. To this day he didn't know how he managed to become friends with her back then. She hardly ever let anyone near her and yet Naruto had managed to befriend her when he was younger and lived in Tokyo. He hadn't seen her in 2 years and what should he say? She hadn't changed much except for the number of wings in her power. When he last saw her, she only had 4 pitch black wings. She had grown into a strong fallen angel in a short time. Some take 50 years to increase from 4 to 6 wings. But she had made it within the first 20 years of her life. Of course, she had a bonus with her partner. Naruto smiled and walked towards her. Thank you for coming. I know you're busy, Naruto said. The fallen one looked at Naruto and sighed when she saw those blue eyes and his smile, which was bursting with warmth. She allowed her lips to curl up in a small smile. Remember your promise, Naruto. I couldn't just disappear like that. He only allowed me to. Come to Kuo by confirming that you would take on the job, said the fallen woman. Naruto nodded. Don't worry, I'll do the job. You know me, I always keep my promises. Naruto said. She knew. How could she not know? This idiot would do anything just to keep his promise. No matter what things he had to do. Even if he had to fight gods, he would keep his promise. He's always been like this. I know that, said the fallen one. Naruto smiled, and in response the fallen one smiled a little too. He was the only one who could penetrate her ice-cold shell with just a simple smile. He was the person who could melt her. The Grigori Ice Queen couldn't help but smile at Naruto. Though she didn't want to, she couldn't help it. We're done here, aren't we? She asked. Naruto nodded. Yes, I have to go to the church and visit someone, but then I'll come to my house. Naruto said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key and gave it to the fallen. You know where I live. I'll be right there. The fallen woman and Naruto walked out of the house, and with a snap of her finger the barrier broke, and the sky returned to normal around the house. She looked at Naruto again before her 6 jet black wings appeared and she darted away. Naruto put his hand a little in front of his face because a small breeze was triggered by her start. Still the same stubborn woman as usual, thought Naruto with a smile. He started towards the church and used the last rays of the setting sun to enjoy the warmth. It wasn't a long way to the church, but he made good use of the short distance. When Naruto arrived at the church, he knew immediately that something was wrong. He would have expected someone to be here. But there was really no one outside of the church here. As usual, the flower gardens looked very good, and so did everything else. Be it the windows, the door or the floor. Everything was cleaned and clean. But there was no trace of people or Asia. Naruto narrowed his eyes and carefully opened the door to the church. The church was completely empty, and no one was here at first glance. Naruto walked into the church and looked around. Something's not quite right here. Asia must have been taken somewhere else, thought Naruto. The church was manageable from the inside, and because of that he could tell straight away that nobody was there. He then walked out of the church and closed the church door. He looked around and thought, there is no other church in Kuo. Where could she be? Thought Naruto. He shook his head and decided to go home first. At least someone was waiting for him today. He looked around and just disappeared in one flickering motion. Naruto appeared at his front door, and right after that his door opened. He went into the house and took off his shoes. He looked at the person who was standing next to him and just stared at him. What's that look for? Naruto asked, confused. The fallen woman gave him an annoyed look, and he had no idea why she was annoyed again. It wasn't anything special, of course, but by now she was mostly normal around him. When were you going to tell me? Albion was in town, asked the fallen one. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What do you think? I didn't know your rival was in Kuo. Naruto said as they both walked down the hall. On the walls were pictures of beautiful landscapes from what seemed like another world. Some were about nature, and some were about a big village in nature with lots of wooden huts and a big wooden tower in the middle. They were beautiful pictures that Naruto's mother had painted. She was a very gifted artist, just as a hobby of course. However, every single picture in the house was of his mother herself, and Naruto hadn't seen any more beautiful pictures or paintings before. Both went into the living room and sat on the couch. In the living room was the normal setup that every living room had. A large couch where several people could fit, a small table in front of the couch, and across the room was a chest of drawers with a large TV hanging on the wall above it. On the side of the living room there were 2 small cupboards for other things like books, glasses or other things. There was also a large table in the room. Naruto's kitchen was rather small, that's why the dining table was here in the living room. Naruto held the book and read quietly while the fallen just sat there and watched him doing something. He knew what was coming. It had happened many times in the past, especially when the two were younger and they were just becoming friends. The fallen woman leaned her head against his shoulder and relaxed her body. She closed her eyes and relaxed. Naruto just smiled the whole time while he read his book, and the fallen woman leaned against his shoulder and slowly started to fall asleep there. He was her haven of peace. With him she could just let herself go. Nowhere else could she just let herself go like she did with Naruto. He was her first friend back then, and he always supported her no matter what she did. He had freed her from her cold world after her mother died. She herself was still in contact with her father and she knew that it wasn't his fault that her mother had died. Her sister saw things a little differently. But the fallen had always been different from her sister. After her mother died, she closed her heart and didn't let anyone but her father near her. When her sister also disappeared, leaving her and her father alone, it got even worse. She had lost not only her mother but also her sister. One day she met Naruto and his family. Her father knew Naruto's father well because they were good friends. There it was inevitable that she would eventually meet Naruto. From the first moment he was like the sun. She couldn't describe it, but she always felt this warmth around him, which was completely foreign to her. It was a different warmth than when her father took her in his arms. He always had a smile on his face and no matter how hard she tried to ignore him like everyone else, she just couldn't. Even then, Naruto had an effect on her like no other. Even her father and Naruto's parents noticed the connection that Naruto and the Fallen formed in a very short time. Naruto could make her laugh with the simplest of things. She hadn't laughed after her mother's death until Naruto showed up. After the first few months that she knew him, she didn't want to leave his side. He made her feel like she could live again. Of course, she continued to be cold with everyone other than her father, but with Naruto she could feel right again. Sunrise at his side was suddenly something special again. Whatever it was, he made her feel like she was alive again. Naruto glanced sideways out of the corner of his eye. He smiled when he saw her peaceful face. He was glad that she could still rest with him. He had some concerns that after 2 years something would have changed between the two. After all, he had moved to Kuo and hadn't seen her in a long time. He saw it in her face then. She was mad at him. She didn't want him to leave and yet he needed to get away from Tokyo. He just had to get out of town and somewhere else. He just couldn't help himself after his parents passed away. She couldn't follow him either because she had duties within the Grigori faction. She was now one of the leading fallen angels. ND had more appeal than most in the faction. He looked back at his book and continued reading. The sun had gone down completely a few minutes ago, so it was getting a bit dark in the house. But Naruto didn't mind because a small lamp in the corner of the room gave enough light for him to still be able to read everything. Naruto opened his eyes and stretched once. The big advantage is writer was not having to get up early in the morning. He looked around and saw the furnishings in his bedroom. He was currently on a king-size bed and right next to his bed was a small dresser with a lamp on it. Otherwise, there was only a large wardrobe in his bedroom. Of course, there was still the balcony, which was connected to his room. Naruto stood up and stretched once. He went to the balcony door and pulled up the blinds. The sun was already high in the sky and that's why the light blinded him a bit at first. He went out onto the balcony and lit a cigarette while leaning against the railing. He smiled while looking over Kuo. Just like Lee's house, his house was set back from Kuo and on a hill, which gave him a good view over Kuo. There was nothing behind his house but a forest. His garden also had a door in the fence that led into the forest. His ears twitched when he heard the door to his room. He knew who was there, so he wasn't worried. Since he was currently only wearing underpants, you could otherwise see his trained body. By the age of 20, Naruto had a toned body. However, his muscles were more defined and not massive like those of others who do strength training. Naruto would rather stay faster than go all out on pure strength. "You still haven't healed your scars," said the Fallen One. Naruto took a puff on his cigar. And blew the smoke out into the world. He looked to the side and looked into the fallen woman's black eyes. She was currently wearing a white shirt from Naruto, which was way too long. The shirt also covered part of her thighs. Many would think that she and Naruto had something to do with the night. But that wasn't the case. Even then she liked to wear Naruto's larger shirts. It didn't matter to him. At least he had enough clothes. There were 4 large scars on Naruto's torso. One right on his throat, the other on his upper right arm, the other on his lower back, and the last one right on his chest. Naruto had acquired these scars in battles. Once he and the Fallen had fought a very strong devil when they were even smaller. Naruto got 3 of his scars in the fight alone. He had protected the Fallen in the fight because she was already unconscious. Naruto was younger there and not nearly as strong as he was today. Today, he could easily defeat the devil from back then. But 10 years ago he wasn't as strong as he was today. Should I? Naruto asked. He drew on his cigarette again and blew the smoke out into the world. You're an idiot. You could easily make your scars disappear with your skills. I don't mind having the scars, Naruto said with a smile. At least I got them for a good reason. The fallen one's cheeks turned pink, so she turned away slightly. Idiot. Naruto had to smile and looked over Kuo again. The fallen woman stood behind Naruto and hugged him from behind. She rested her head on his shoulder and looked over Kuo with him. Neither said anything, just enjoying each other's closeness. These two really had a very special bond that was hard to find in the world. That would be clear to anyone who saw the two of them. But through the barrier that the fallen had erected yesterday, the two could not see anyone. To beings outside the barrier, it looked like nobody would be in the house. Nae momentarily saw that Naruto and the fallen woman were on the balcony. When are you going to do the job? Naruto thought for a moment while dragging on his cigarette. He blew smoke out into the world and replied, I guess I'll leave tomorrow. He glanced at his shoulder, where the head of the fallen woman was. Are you coming with me? Is the question rhetorical? Naruto just smiled and looked straight again. Maybe we'll meet up with old friends again. Naruto said, we'll see about that tomorrow. The sun was about to set and the reddish rays of the sun bathed Kuo in a reddish orange. The overall atmosphere was very pleasant and every living being in Kuo took advantage of the beautiful atmosphere for something. Naruto and the fallen were walking through the park momentarily and didn't say much. They enjoyed the nice atmosphere just like the other people in the park. The animals in the park were also more active today than usual because you saw some deer or even a fox. An eagle had even dared to fly to the fallen woman and sit on her arm. It had been a nice calm day so far. Today the two just wanted to spend some time together and make up for lost time. When do you have to go back? Naruto asked. He knew she wouldn't be with him forever. He enjoyed the time he had with her, but eventually she would have to go back. She had responsibilities and she couldn't walk away from the Grigori faction just like that. As usual, Naruto wore a long-sleeved white shirt, gray pants and brown shoes. The fallen was currently wearing a black top with a gray jacket over it and blue pants with black shoes. She had her long black hair with some spikes tied in a high ponytail with a dark blue hairband. On each side of her face, she had two long strands that framed her face. I can stay here for a few days, said the fallen. Naruto smiled and nodded happily. That meant he had more time with her than he thought he would. He would have thought that she would have to go back after tomorrow. Naruto and the fallen stopped and looked at the sky. In the sky right now, a bunch of devils were flying through the air towards Kuo Academy. It was no secret that the devils who ruled this area had their HQ there. Naruto didn't know exactly who ruled here, but the devils hadn't harmed anyone yet. Except for Naruto, no one knew that the fallen woman was here. The fallen one narrowed her eyes briefly when she recognized one of the devils directly. Anyone you know? Naruto asked. My young sister, she said simply. Naruto looked after the devils and was surprised by this revelation. He had only met her when her sister had left her and her father. This was a very sensitive topic and Naruto never brought up the subject. I see, Naruto said. He had sometimes wondered what had become of her sister. Apparently, she was reincarnated into a devil. He looked at her and could see her annoyed face. He carefully took her hand in his and in response she looked at him. Come on, I'm going to cook today, Naruto said. He wasn't a celebrity chef, but he could cook normal meals. He just wanted to take her mind off things. She closed his hand in hers and just nodded. Naruto and the fallen continued walking, still enjoying the atmosphere at dusk. After 20 minutes the sun had set complete. And that's why they had actually decided to walk towards Naruto's house again. Before the two could walk to the house, the fallen woman noticed something. Naruto stopped because she stopped too. He looked up at the sky and immediately understood why she had stopped. This was the first time he saw those wings. The wings of the Longinus sacred gears divine dividing. She was floating up there, looking down at Naruto and the fallen. Her long silver hair swayed in the wind as she slowly slid to the ground. The possessor of the divine dividing and thus the rival of the fallen. A green glow appeared on the left hand Naruto was holding. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto looked at the hand and could hear the legendary dragon's voice. The dragon, which had had a rivalry with another dragon for thousands of years. And even after its body was destroyed, the two dragons continued their battles. Long time no heard your voice, Drake. Naruto said. He let go of the fallen Omen's hand and she raised her hand slightly. Before the two could talk more, the woman with long silver hair landed a few meters in front of them. The blue and white wings shimmered a little and her silver eyes looked into the black ones of the fallen. So, you're Drake's partner, she said. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and just listened. This seemed to be the first meeting between the two rivals. And he had no right to say anything here. This meeting was just to say hello before they fought at some point in the near future. Naruto knew that, and even if he was worried, he couldn't interfere. You were the partner of Albion. So, we meet again, Albion. Drake's voice rang out as the green light on the fallen's left hand shone stronger briefly, then faded. You seem to have gotten a good mate this time, Drake. Albion's voice rang out as the blue wings flared. You too, Albion. I feel a tremendous power in her. The two women just looked at each other and let the two dragons talk to each other. I'm looking forward to our fight. Me too. My name is Valley. I hope you will be ready. I long for a good fight with you, Red Dragon Empress, said Valley. She looked at Naruto and narrowed her eyes briefly as she felt a strong power within Naruto. She didn't know exactly what it was, but her blood warned her about Naruto. As if she were near holy ground like a church. Here she was in a park and far from a church or shrine. I'm looking forward to it, said the fallen. Valley looked briefly at the fallen woman and then she looked again at Naruto. Who are you? Asked Valley. That aura. Albion's voice rang out, causing everyone present to look at the wings. What do you mean, Albion? Valley asked. Forget it. I thought I knew this aura. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. It's an honor to meet the owner of the legendary divine dividing. Naruto said. Naruto Uzumaki. I'll remember your name, Valley said. She still didn't know what that feeling was. Naruto exuded a kind of power that set off all her alarm bells. It was as if he were a great danger and yet not. She didn't know exactly what to make of it. Even her partner seemed to have noticed something. She looked at the fallen angel. What's your name? Asked Valley. She would like to know the name of her rival before setting off. She still had one job to do. Otherwise she would be in trouble. Her comrades were already on their way to HQ again, and had Albion not sensed Drake's or she would be already at their HQ to report back. Naruto really didn't know what it was. Like the fallen one, Valley didn't have a very seductive physique, as it was typical for female devils. Her physique was about the same as his old friends. Not too big chest and not particular curves like most. But Naruto was sure that just like the fallen next to him, Valley was a much desired devil. How exactly did he know she was a devil? It was pretty easy because for a brief moment she showed her bat-like wings. One thing, however, was different from other devils. She had more than just 2 wings. She had 6 total, as did the fallen one next to him. That said a lot about her true origins. Every devil only had 2 wings, no matter how strong he was. There was one bloodline there, however, which did not fall into this chemistry. The descendants of the original Satan. Thus, Valley would be a descendant of the original Lucifer and thus would have inherited a particularly strong power. But judging by the number of wings, she was just as strong as the fallen one. The fallen looked into the silver eyes of Valley. Valley wore a white t-shirt under a black leather jacket. She also wore blue pants and black leather boots. Her silver eyes were exactly the same depth as her black ones. Just like herself, Valley had lost a lot in the past. But through something she managed to catch herself again. My name is Sayuri, said Sayuri. I have one question before you go. Naruto said. It would probably be best if he slowly found out who ruled right here in Kuo. So far, he never had to worry about the devils. But now they would know about him and Sayuri. They wouldn't be able to just ignore him like that, his abilities were too special for that. Of course, Valley didn't know his abilities, but she had already felt it. Even Albion had commented on his aura. His ability always triggered certain reactions in devils when they were close to him. After all, he could use holy power and Hus used the same power that was used in the system of God to work miracles. Because of the holy power, devils or other creatures of darkness sensed danger when they walked on holy ground. Naruto W. As the only one who could use this power himself and work miracles himself. Valley looked into Naruto's blue eyes. Are you part of the group of devils that rule Kuo? Naruto asked. She didn't say anything and just looked at him. It was still there, that uneasiness throughout her body. He seemed so inconspicuous and yet her blood warned her about Naruto. She narrowed her eyes. I am. Why does a human want to know, and what is your connection to my rival? Is it so reprehensible to want to know if you are part of the group of devils living peacefully in the city with the humans? Naruto asked. Valley was a bit surprised by this answer. She would have expected a lot, but not this answer. Naruto smiled at that, exuding an unfamiliar warmth that was completely foreign to her. That warmth only alarmed her more. This wasn't normal warmth. No, thanks for your honesty, Naruto said with a smile. I don't want to keep you any longer. Valley turned away slightly, but looked at Sayuri again and then at Naruto again. Her silver eyes met Naruto's blue ones, and after a few seconds she turned her back on them both and darted away, leaving a cloud of dust in her wake. That was interesting, Naruto said. Sayuri stayed silent and watched Valley go. Naruto Uzumaki, you should be careful. Drake's voice rang out. Naruto looked at Sayuri's hand and she did the same. The boosted gear appeared automatically this time. Albion had felt it very clearly. Not only your strength, but also your partner. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That was impossible. After all, his partner was somewhere in Japan at the moment and was experiencing a lot. Nobody should be allowed to feel the power of their partner at the moment. Naruto could, of course, call his partner directly back to him. But he would only do it in an emergency. After all, he wanted his partner to discover the world and have fun too. How do you mean that? My partner shouldn't be felt, Naruto said. Sayuri was also curious about the answer. Unlike Drake, Naruto's partner could roam freely in the world. Drake was trapped in the sacred gear, but Naruto's partner could also wander around like an avatar and transform into a human. That may be true for normal humans or supernatural beings, but Albion and I are not the two heavenly dragons for nothing. We can do things that other beings cannot. Whether your partner was currently separated from you, you still have a connection. Only through this connection could you call him back directly to you and fight with him. Albion and I can feel that connection. Couldn't you share such information with us beforehand? Sayuri asked, a bit annoyed. She didn't want Naruto to be targeted as well. Her destiny was to fight with Valley. And she looked forward to fighting her rival herself. After all, she had her pride, and she would make sure she would win. But Naruto had nothing to do with this whole thing. If they found out that he also owned a sacred gear and exactly what kind, he would get a lot of attention. She didn't want that, and she would do anything to keep him unnoticed. It was enough Hat Valley was a devil and therefore felt certain things about Naruto. It was a natural reaction to Naruto's presence. Demonic power was the complete opposite of the holy power Naruto could use. Her blood had reacted directly to the holy power in Naruto, and because of that she was wary. Until now there has been no reason why this information would have served any purpose. You told me yourself that I should only pass on the most important information to you because you preferred not to show your sacred gear so openly. Sayuri frowned and simply nodded in response. There were already some who knew about her sacred gear. But many didn't know that she owned the boosted gear. Okay, thanks Drake. Sayuri said. The boosted gear disappeared and with it the presence of Drake. Sayuri lowered her arm and sighed, looked at Sayuri and could see that she was annoyed and not a little. Come on, let's go to my place. At least we want to leave tomorrow, Naruto said. Sayuri just nodded and they both started walking. Although today was the first meeting between her and Valley, she wasn't particularly happy about the situation. If Naruto hadn't been there, she wouldn't have had any problems. But Valley could endanger Naruto's peaceful life. Naruto should still be able to live his peaceful life. When both had walked for a few minutes, Sayuri said, Naruto, Wouldn't you rather move back to Tokyo? Naruto looked at her in surprise. Where does that question come from? Naruto asked. He looked at her confused and he could see her worried black eyes. Your peaceful life is in danger and it's only because of me. Valley will definitely report back about you and that will draw the attention of the devils in town. Your skills could come out and that would get you a lot of attention. You couldn't live peacefully anymore without fear that either devil or angel would come to you. Sayuri said. Naruto looked at her for a few seconds and then smiled softly. He hugged Sayuri and she blushed slightly but hugged back. I'm already aware of this, Sayuri. But eventually everyone will know about my abilities. I'm surprised myself and very grateful that I was able to live relatively peacefully for the first 20 years of my life, but at some point, I have to act. I owe it to my parents. Sayuri didn't say anything and just buried her head in his chest. She knew it, of course, but that would put him in danger. She didn't want it. After all, the idiot was much too good-natured. He would face many battles and along the way, he would meet many other people who might need his help. He would never just look the other way and do nothing. He has always been like this and would never change. You're just too good-natured, idiot. Sayuri said quietly. Naruto just smiled and continued to hold her while he looked at the sky. He could see the person who was currently hiding behind the clouds. He could feel her sacred gear. So he knew exactly where she was. There you are, Valley, said a female voice. Valley had just walked into the room. Valley looked at the person who had saved her and to whom she owed her current life. When she was younger, she was hunted for her heritage. It didn't help that she was just a little girl at the time and couldn't communicate. One day she appeared in front of her and offered her a place to live. Only because of the person in front of her had she found her reason to live again. Only because of her could she laugh and smile again. She would stay by her side and support her forever. It was the least she could do for this person. I'm back, Valley said with a slight smile. She was always happy to come back here. Her place was right here and nowhere else. What have you been doing for so long? Normally you should have gotten here an hour ago. Valley nodded and sat down on one of the two couches that were in the room. The man with the golden blonde hair and those ocean blue eyes came to her mind again, and this chilling feeling she had with him. She had followed Naruto and Sayuri all the way to Naruto's house, high in the air of course where no one could see her. At least that's what she thought until the end, but she could see it quite clearly at the end. At the end, before he disappeared into the house, Naruto looked up again and that exactly in her direction. Even though she was flying so high in the sky, it seemed to her like Naruto was looking for her straight in the eyes. I met my rival, Valley said, glancing at the desk that was also in the room. The room was lit only by a few candles. Right in the middle of the room was a table with a candlestick on it, momentarily illuminating the room. Right and left was a black leather couch, where 4 people fit on it. Directly behind the table and further along the back wall of the room was a solid wood desk that had elegant carvings carved into the wood. Behind the desk was a single leather chair where the person who was speaking to Valley was currently sitting. There was another window in the room with curtains on it. There was even a functional shower in the right rear corner. Directly next to the double doors, which led to the room, there were cupboards for books, glasses and other things on the right and left. A few pictures of landscapes or houses hung on the walls, which did not appear to be of that age. There were also some animals in the landscapes that shouldn't have existed at that time. The person sitting on the leather chair at the desk momentarily looked into Valley's silver eyes with her blue-green eyes. She was a beautiful young woman with a voluptuous body, white skin and already said blue-green eyes. She had a very curvy figure with massive breasts, unlike Valley or Sayuri. Many say that this woman was the #1 beauty at the Kuo Academy. She wore her normal attire, which consisted of a white long-sleeved button-down shirt, short sleeves for spring, summer, with a black ribbon on her shirt collar worn under a black shoulder cape and a matching button-down corset, a magenta skirt with white accents, and brown dress shoes over white crew-length socks. This was the normal school uniform of the Kuo Academy for females. After all, this woman was a student of the Kuo Academy. Her name was Rias Gramori, sister of the current Satan Sirzex Gramori or Sirzex Lucifer. She did not view her peerage members as servants but as family members. The Grimoire were known to treat their PIRA-GE members as a second family and not as servants or slaves. Rias seemed a bit surprised by this revelation. "So, you finally met the person who has the boosted gear?" asked Rias. She put down he pen and took her glasses off her nose and placed them on the desk as well. "Yes, she is a fallen angel and a strong one at that," Valley said. Rias narrowed her eyes. "Does that mean she's in Kuo?" Rias asked. She was of course happy for Valley that she had finally met her rival. After all, for several years she had wanted to finally meet her rival because she was proud of the power she had gained. However, having a strong fallen angel in Kuo could cause problems. 2 days ago, she had received reports of some fallen angels being sighted on the outskirts of Kuo. Only Tota, why they had made acquaintance with a fallen angel who was traveling with a nun. It could be that they are planning something, and Rias wouldn't let that happen. After all, Kuo was the territory of the Grimoire and Citri families. Nobody should just set foot here in the city without announcing themselves. Otherwise, others could provoke a war. Valley nodded. "Yes, I met her in the park. If Albion hadn't sensed Drake's presence, I wouldn't have sensed it at all. She can completely suppress her aura, but not the boosted gear's aura," said Valley. Although she couldn't feel this aura at first, only after Albion had informed her about it. "Are you stronger?" asked Rias. Valley looked at Rias. "I'll be honest, I don't know. She had an aura that was just as strong as mine and I bet she'd mastered the balance break as well," said Valley. "I just have a feeling and Albion agrees with me there." Rias just nodded at this information. Valley was their strongest member. She was also stronger than herself. After all, Rias needed all 8 pawn pieces to accept her in her peerage. Given her lineage and Longinus' sacred gear, it was only foreseeable that Valley would eventually become stronger than Rias or the rest of her peerage. "I don't think she had anything to do with the other fallen angels, though," Valley said. "What makes you think that?" Rias asked. "She was with someone, and the fallen angels would never acquaint themselves with the company of Drake's mate." Valley said. "She was with someone?" Rias asked. "Yes. From the moment I saw the man besides her I had a weird feeling. It was like being near a church. My blood warned me of this man. Even though he looked so nondescript, every fiber of my being warned me." Albion had also sensed something odd about this man. Valley said. "I don't know exactly how to describe it. It wasn't exactly the same feeling when I was near a church. It was even stronger and special when I was right in front of him. When I was still in the air, I only had a faint feeling there, but when I landed to look at my rival, there was a shock coursing through my whole body. My entire body ached for a brief moment just from being near the man." Rias didn't like this story at all. There was only one creature in history that had such an effect on its sheer existence. The God of the Bible as the only one who could use holy power in its raw form. Other beings can only use holy power through the system that God created. Through the system that God created, humans could use exorcism or create holy water. It also made some miracles possible. However, as Valley just described, this man also had the ability to use holy power. "I'm sure you've been thinking the same thing as me. This man has holy power and not through the church. He was oozing with holy power, and this gave me that feeling. When I was a little distant from him and my rival, Albion hinted at that fact. At first, he had thought that he had felt the aura of God in the man. But it wasn't him," Valley said. Rias leaned back and put both hands in front of her face. "There was also the fact that he was a human and not a fallen angel," said Valley. Rias raised both eyebrows at this information. A human should be able to use holy power just like the God of the Bible. That would be impossible, but according to Valley's tale it would be the same. She would never think that Valley would lie to her. So, there's a human living in Kuo who can use holy power just like the God of the Bible. Rias said. She never thought the day would end with such information. That a fallen angel was here in Kuo, who was also Valley's rival, was worrying. But now a human was said to also be able to use holy power. That would be much more problematic. Such a human was a great danger to any single devil, and that included Rias and her peerage. "Yes, I also know where he lives. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. And he lives just outside of Kuo on a small hill. His house looks normal, and my rival is with him right now. Valley said. Rias crossed her arms under her breasts and looked at the window, which was momentarily covered by curtains. In recent years everything had been peaceful here and she occasionally only had to take care of individual dangers, which was not a problem for her. But now she had to face a very big danger, which made even Valley shudder. Normally, Valley was always ready for anything and everyone. She was always up for a good fight, but even now her body language was more than obvious. Her entire body was tense, and she hadn't fully recovered from meeting this Naruto. She was concerned for the safety of her family and her rival's family. After all, she shared Kuo with her rival, and she too had a peerage, just like Rias herself. Sona would definitely need to be informed. Does he know about us? Rias asked. Yes. At the end he asked if I was part of your peerage. I still don't really know what to think of this Naruto. On the one hand there was his charisma and his aura, but on the other hand there was his attitude and his gaze. He didn't appear threatening from the outside and he didn't seem to see me as an enemy. He seemed more worried about my rival because he was looking at her with concerned eyes. She tall. Her what else happened during the meeting and also immediately afterwards where she followed him. Rias just listened and occasionally asked for some specific information. Valley had once described Naruto in more detail and from the description Rias even knew him. He was a writer and she had even read one of his books. She knew she had heard that name before somewhere. At the end of the conversation, Valley asked a valid question. So, Naruto has been living in Kuo for 3 years. Then why hasn't he done anything against us yet? Rias and Valley didn't know the answer to this question. Rias had explained that Naruto was a writer and that she once read an interview he did. The interview had been hinted at in one of his books and since Rias was interested in the writer, she had gotten all the information about Naruto. In the interview he revealed that he lived in Kuo. It was 2 years ago that he revealed this and by that time, by his own admission, he had been living in Kuo for a year. However, that also gave Rias other ideas. If Naruto wasn't a threat, then she could try to get him on her side. After all, he was human, and Valley had also indicated that he should have sacred gear. Albion had sensed something there and told Valley. However, it was already very late and so they both went to Rias's house to sleep. Valley lived with Rias in the house and also slept with her in one bed. Rias was Valley's best friend and the most important person in her life. Naruto knew right away that something was wrong. When he woke up and found Sayuri in the living room after a few minutes. She seemed annoyed, more than usual, and that said something to him. Something had happened that she didn't like. What's going on? Naruto asked. He was currently only wearing gray pants. Sayuri stood annoyed at the door to the garden and looked at Naruto. She sighed and then looked into the garden where there were 2 cherry blossom trees. My father contacted me, Sayuri said. Something serious? You could say it like this. A few fallen angels seem to do something stupid here in Kuo and since I'm here I'm supposed to take care of it. Sayuri said. She didn't like cleaning up after others. Especially not when some fallen angels think they have to do something stupid. She had often corrected weaker fallen angels to avoid problems with other supernatural races. Looks like we're going to delay my assignment a bit, Naruto said. Sayuri just nodded and looked at Naruto. It looks like the incident also affects the nun you met the other day. Naruto had explained to her everything that had happened before her appearance yesterday. You mean Asia? So, my guess was right, Naruto said. He stood behind Sayuri and hugged her from behind. Sayuri sighed and leaned into Naruto while closing her eyes. He always knew what she needed. She was annoyed because the same thing kept repeating itself. But by Naruto's closeness she relaxed and calmed down immediately. She could just think clearly around him. Let's have something to eat before we take care of the problem. You must be hungry, Naruto said. Uri just nodded and frowned when Naruto let go of her. She turned and followed him into the kitchen. She looked at his scars and thought back to the fight against the devil that attacked her and Naruto. She hadn't paid attention to the fight for just a moment and that's why she passed out. She didn't know exactly what happened when she was unconscious. But when she woke up again a few minutes later, there was Naruto standing in front of her with both arms spread out. All she could see was how he fell to the ground and lay there motionless. He had clearly been protecting her while she was unconscious. It was also this moment that led to her awakening her sacred gear. Through her anger, she directly harnessed the great power of the boosted gears. The boosted gear or sacred gears in general, which housed a dragon, reacted particularly strongly to the wearer's anger or rage. Anger or fury was the emotion that empowers a dragon the most, and Sayuri was filled with so much anger, hatred, and anger at the moment that the boosted gear naturally responded. With the boosted gear she managed to kill the devil back then. That was also the moment when Naruto awakened his sacred gear. It happened to him while he was being knocked out by the devil's last hit. When he fell unconscious, he had met his partner, and after that he was able to summon and use his sacred gear. She glanced at his head because he was looking over his shoulder and was smiling at her. Sayuri couldn't help it and smiled a bit too. After a few more steps, both were in the kitchen and there they made themselves a hearty breakfast. There was a lot to do today. According to her father, not only one fallen angel was involved, but directly 4 fallen angels. This was not ordinary, and it meant that something big was planned. You mentioned that the nun had a sacred gear, Sayuri said as she made breakfast with Naruto. Naruto nodded and sliced the meat while Sayuri sliced the vegetables. Yes, she has the Twilight Healing, a sacred gear that creates miracles and can heal others of almost any injury. Naruto said. Sayuri nodded. Then she will be the main reason why the fallen angels are here in Kuo. Sayuri said. You'll be able to guess what her sacred gear means to her. I know that, and that's why I won't let it happen. She's too innocent for the world. Naruto said. He would definitely make sure that nothing would happen to Asia. A ceremony to remove a sacred gear required preparation and could not happen immediately. So, Naruto and Sayuri had some time before the ceremony would actually take place. I can do this by myself, Sayuri said. She didn't want everyone to know about Naruto's abilities just yet. Even within the Grigori faction, only Sayuri, her father, and Azazel were aware of Naruto's abilities. No one else knew of his abilities within the Grigori faction. It should stay that way for now. Naruto looked at her. I would prefer it if you stayed in the background. I don't want the other fallen angels to find out about your powers just yet, Sayuri said. Naruto sighed and looked into her black eyes. He knew she didn't want that. He also knew that she could easily take care of everything. He just didn't want anything to happen to Asia. He wanted to save her personally too. Such an innocent nun didn't deserve to experience something like that. He's never been able to resist a request from Sayuri. All right then. But before we go, I have to call my partner back. Only with him back inside can I completely suppress my aura and cover it with his. Naruto said. Sayuri nodded contentedly with a slight smile. Then call him right back. I'll keep preparing the food in the meantime, Sayuri said. Naruto put the knife aside and nodded. Okay, I'll hurry, Naruto said. Sayuri watched Naruto walk out of the kitchen towards the garden. She smiled because Naruto complied with her request as usual. Even after the 2 years, nothing had changed between them. They were still inseparable and always would be. She went back to making breakfast while Naruto called his partner. Naruto just walked out of the house into the garden and looked up at the sky. He focused on the connection he shared with his partner and immediately thereafter felt his presence loud and clear. Master, what is going on? Asked his partner. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Naruto said. You could never disturb me, master. I only live so that I can serve you. Naruto smiled slightly. I've told you often enough that you don't serve me. We are partners, not masters and servant. You may see it that way, master, but to me you are my only true master, said his partner. Okay, listen, I need you in Kuo. Please come right back and get back into my body, Naruto said. As you wish, master. I'll be right there, said his partner. Naruto looked up at the sky and only had to wait a few seconds until a golden light appeared in the sky, which shot in his direction like a meteor. Naruto wasn't concerned and smiled as he saw his partner's form in the golden light. He was as majestic as ever in his true form. The golden light bounced off Naruto's body and briefly bathed the garden in golden light. Naruto could feel his partner becoming one with him again. Thanks for coming so quickly. I'll explain everything in a few minutes. Naruto said while a weapon appeared in his hand. The weapon began to glow, and a deep voice rang out. "As you wish, master," said the deep voice of Naruto's partner. Naruto nodded and then the weapon disappeared in a golden light. This weapon was the other form his sacred gear could take. He went back into the house and smiled. It had already been 2 years since he was united with his partner and could feel him directly like now. Now he felt whole again. Of course, he didn't want to tie his partner to him all the time, so he let him explore Japan. But it was good to be with him again. Master. Naruto found himself in a familiar scenario. Red-yellow flames raged all around him, lighting up the landscape. The sky was dark, but that didn't matter. After all, Naruto wasn't in the real world here, but in his sacred gear. His partner could materialize as an avatar in the real world but could not fight in this form. His true form was right in front of him. The true form of Naruto's partner was the massive inferno that raged all around him and didn't seem to stop. When he met his partner for the first time when he was unconscious, he was frightened at first. "What's wrong?" Naruto asked. Just before he arrived at the kitchen, his consciousness was pulled into his sacred gear by his partner. He was a little confused because he hadn't even explained why he needed his partner. "On my way back, I sensed a strong aura heading towards Kuo." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Who is it?" Naruto asked. His partner pulled him into the sacred gear for a reason. He usually just announced it and only with Naruto's approval did his partner pull his consciousness into the sacred gear. A few minutes later, Naruto blinked once as he found himself back in the real world. He had a long conversation with his partner and also informed him about everything that was going on at the moment. His partner was happy that he was reunited with Naruto. He went into the kitchen and saw Sayuri just dividing the finished food onto 2 plates. It was a normal dish of vegetables, meat and some rice. This dish was nothing special and was prepared quickly. All you had to do was cook the rice and prepare the meat and vegetables at the same time. By the time the rice was ready, the vegetables were done, and the meat was also done. "Sorry, my partner pulled me into the sacred gear, and we had a long conversation there. He warned me out something and then I let him in on the situation," Naruto explained. Sayuri nodded and then asked, "What did he warn you about?" Asked Sayuri. "Someone with a strong aura is heading to Kuo. I can only imagine that this being is targeting the devils in the city," Naruto said. Sayuri frowned. "Great. One more thing we have to deal with," Sayuri said. She had hoped that she could take care of the situation quickly and then go back to the house with Naruto. She was sure that the devils had also noticed the fallen angels and would not sit idle about the situation. What's more, Naruto wasn't going to sit by either. He would never allow a massive battle to break out in Kuo. She knew him better than any other person in this world. This idiot would do anything to keep the people of Kuo from getting involved. She had still hoped that he would really just be in the background and let her do all the work. But now he would also get involved. She was sure of that. "Let's eat first. We still have a little time before everything happens," Naruto said with a smile. "While Sayuri takes care of Asia, I will take care of him," Naruto thought to himself. Sayuri nodded and they both took a plate and went into the living room where the dining table was. They both sat down and began to eat in peace. Sayuri looked at Naruto out of the corner of her eye and frowned when she saw him. She had completely forgotten that he no longer radiated this warmth when he suppressed his aura with his partner. Naruto noticed her look straight away. "Are you okay?" Naruto asked. He really wondered what was going on. He knew that look and knew straight away that she didn't like something. She stayed quiet and just continued eating, too stubborn to admit that she wanted to continue feeling his warmth. Naruto thought about what was different than usual. He ate a little more and then something occurred to him. He no longer suppressed his aura and immediately afterwards he could see Sayuri's body relaxing. "Why don't you say anything?" Naruto asked with a smile. He placed a hand on her hand, and she felt the warmth of Naruto. Her cheeks turned slightly pink and looked away. After a few seconds she looked at Naruto and saw his warm smile. She hated that he had such an effect on her. Her body reacted on its own and that's why she smiled slightly. "It's not my right to complain. After all, I wanted you to stay out of it," Sayuri said. It was only because of Sayuri that Naruto had called his partner back and started suppressing his aura with him. That's why he had stopped giving off this warmth that angels, fallen angels and people of the church could automatically feel. The devils also felt this warmth. But for devils this warmth was dangerous and not pleasant. When we're alone, I won't suppress my aura, Naruto said with a smile. Sayuri didn't say anything and just smiled. They continued to hold each other's hand and continued to eat with their free hand. After a few minutes they were both finished and stood up. Sayuri frowned as Naruto released her hand and walked forward. She followed him and thought about the information Naruto's partner had told him. In the kitchen, as they both finished putting the dishes in the sink, Naruto held up his hand and his sacred gear appeared. It seemed pretty unremarkable for the power it held. His sacred gear was shaped like a Japanese katana with a red handle and oval sword guard. Sayuri hadn't heard the voice of Naruto's partner in a long time. She knew Naruto's partner of course and also knew how strong Naruto's sacred gear was. It wasn't officially a Longinus, but it definitely had the power of a Longinus level sacred gear. Long time no see, Drake. The deep voice of Naruto's partner rang out as the katana glowed. Sayuri could directly see the green light appearing on her left hand. Yes, it's been 3 years now, Ryujin Jaka. Have you met Albion yet? Yes. The encounter has already happened and soon we will fight him and his partner. Okay, that's enough, Sayuri said. Tell them both, partner, Naruto said, looking at the katana in his hand. Of course, master, said Ryujin Jaka. A strong devil will appear in Kuo shortly. According to his aura, he is a strong devil. I Zeus, Pectes targeting Searzek's Lucifer's little sister. Sayuri, while you take care of Asia, I will stand by and intervene in case the devil plans to attack people, Naruto said. Promise me something, Sayuri said. Only intervene if it's really necessary. She looked him straight into his heavenly blue eyes. Naruto saw her look and like usual, he couldn't refuse her request. He nodded. Okay, I promise. I will only intervene if he attacks someone. Naruto said. I hope she accepts that statement. Naruto thought to himself. Sayuri smiled slightly. Thanks, Naruto. 30 minutes later, Naruto and Sayuri hugged once and when they both broke apart, she took 3 steps back and then her 6 jet black wings appeared on her back. As usual, some pitch black feathers appeared in the air and flew to the ground. Be careful, Naruto said. Sayuri just nodded and turned around. She flew away, leaving a small cloud of dust behind from her quick start. He watched her for a while and thought, I should get going too. The devil comes from the north. Naruto thought. He locked the door behind him and put the key in his pocket. He suppressed the aura of his holy power and because of this, everyone could only feel his partner. He had once told Sayuri that he didn't like using his partner's full power. By full power, Naruto meant the balance break from his sacred gear. It had a massive effect on his surroundings and Naruto could accidentally kill people just because they were nearby if he activated his balance break. His partner's normal strength was not a problem. But the balance break was very dangerous. He was very strong, but he also had risks. Naruto could never maintain the balance break for too long or bad things would happen. Naruto looked into the distance and remembered the promise he made at his parents' grave. He looked at his hand and then back into the distance before his eyes narrowed and he disappeared in a flickering motion. Valley Lucifer sensed it in the distance. Someone strong was on his way to Kuo. She was currently on her way to an old church outside of Kuo where the fallen angels were supposed to be. She had volunteered to take care of the fallen angels. These 4 fallen angels had no chance against her and Albion. She could also sense her rival making her way over there. From the looks of it, Naruto didn't seem to be with her. This could be a good way to find out her true strength. She was sure that she would win. But it would always be good to know the approximate strength of your opponent. As she flew through the air, she thought about Naruto. She didn't know why, but she couldn't get him out of her mind. He was full of mysteries. Just the fact that he was the second existence after the God of the Bible, who could use holy power without any aids, was one thing. But what was really bothering her all the time was the fact that he hadn't done anything against Valley and her friends yet. She had gathered more information about Naruto with Rias and the others, and it came out that he had actually been living here for 3 years. Why did someone with the power to cause great harm to a devil do nothing even though he knew about Valley and her friends? He had admitted it himself when he asked her if she was part of the group of devils that had their HQ at Kuo Academy. There was also his connection to her rival. Why were a human and a fallen woman so good friends? It was normal for exiled priests to join some fallen angels. But Naruto Uzumaki had never been part of the church. That was another reason she was so confused. Why was someone with the gift of using the same power as God not part of the church? Sayuri and Naruto seemed to have a deep-sea connection and had known each other for a long time. She could tell that when she met them for the first time and then followed them to Naruto's house. She stopped in midair as a red magic circle appeared next to her ear. Her best friend's voice rang out. Valley, come back immediately. Rias said in a serious tone. Valley was confused. How come? Graphia is here and has informed me that a dangerous enemy is on its way to us. Forget the fallen angels and come back immediately, that's an order. Rias said. Valley frowned when she heard the order. She knew full well that Rias would normally never command her. She only did this when she was truly sure that her servants were in grave danger. She trusted her best friend's assessment and looked in the direction where she could sense her rival. Got it, said Valley. I'm sorry Valley, but I don't want anything to happen to you. I don't like doing this, believe me. Rias said. I know, Rias, Valley said annoyed. Before she could turn around to fly back, she sensed the presence of a sacred gear. Valley, Naruto Uzumaki is nearby and is currently making his way towards the enemy. Rias had heard everything, and her eyes widened at this information. Valley looked at the blue-white shimmering wings with which she was currently flying. Are you sure? I don't feel this danger I did the other day, Valley said. Yes, he has suppressed his aura with the help of his sacred gear so that no one can sense his holy power. I feel the aura of his sacred gear exactly and I now know what kind of sacred gear he has. Rias, I should go there too and observe everything. We don't know how strong Naruto Uzumaki is. Valley said. Valley could easily hear Rias talking to Graphia briefly and after that she clearly heard Rias' voice. Valley, you take care of the fallen angels as planned. Graphia and I will look into the matter. My brother sent Graphia here to warn us and to gather information about Naruto Uzumaki. Rias said. As you wish. I will be on my way, said Valley. She would like to see Naruto's strength, but she also wanted to meet her rival again. In the end, she didn't care where she went. She would have been okay with either. Be careful, Rias said and then the red magic circle next to Valley's ear disappeared. Valley took off again, leaving a ring of air in her wake from her massive speed. As she flew, Albion spoke up. You should be careful of Naruto Uzumaki in the future, Valley. Valley looked over her shoulder as she continued to fly. What do you mean, Albion? If he ever used his balance break in Kuo, the entire city could be destroyed. Her eyes widened at that statement. She paused in midair. What exactly do you mean by that? Why would the entire city be destroyed if he used the balance break from his sacred gear? His sacred gear. Naruto ran at superhuman speed towards the north, where the devil would soon appear. He would keep his distance, as he had promised. But if the devil attacked someone, Naruto would intervene. He just hoped everything would be okay. He knew Asia would be saved. Sayuri would make sure of Hat and that's why Naruto could concentrate completely on his own task. He stopped just outside Kuo and looked in the direction where the devil would come. Then let's see who you are exactly. Naruto thought to himself. He looked up at the sky and observed some clouds and after a few minutes he felt it. The devil who was on his way to Kuo. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he recognized him in the air. He had always wondered what was taking him so long. The devil didn't fly particularly fast, although he could fly much faster. At least he should be able to. One thing immediate. Lee struck him. The devil didn't have normal wings. They were wings of reddish-yellow flame. A phoenix. What is someone from the Phoenix clan doing here? Naruto thought to himself. He knew most the devil clans that had an important role in hell. There was only one kind of devil who had wings of flame. The Phoenix clan, which was also known as the clan of the Immortals due to its strong regenerative power. As the name Phoenix suggested, the devils of the Phoenix clan controlled the flames of hellfire. Each member had strong regenerative abilities and high fire mastery. They were one of the 72 pillars of hell. It was a famous and strong clan. Naruto had already fought against a devil from the Phoenix clan and killed him. No matter what abilities devils have, it all depend on the demonic power each devil possessed. Naruto could use his holy power to negate certain abilities of devils, including the regenerative ability of the Phoenix clan. He couldn't see exactly what the devil looked like from the ground, but he could see black clothing, blonde hair and the red flames. Everything else couldn't be seen because the devil was too far in the air. He moved into the shade of the trees and pursued the devil. He didn't seem to have noticed Naruto, other than just ignoring him. It was strange to see this devil flying over the land at a normal speed. It was almost as if he wanted to be discovered. Out of nowhere, his entire body was surrounded by red flames and immediately afterwards he shot towards Naruto at a high speed. Naruto narrowed his eyes and braced himself. It looks like this devil doesn't seem to like being watched, Naruto thought to himself. Naruto jumped away in time before the devil could hit him. When the devil hit the ground, an explosion was triggered and the ground shook slightly. Naruto landed a few feet away and looked at where the devil had landed. As the black smoke slowly cleared, Naruto could see the shadow of the devil. Where he had landed there was now a small crater and, in the crater, you could see occasional small flames that were about to disappear. It's not nice to watch someone, human, the devil said in a serious voice. Now Naruto could see his red eyes, which looked threatening. He wore a white t-shirt under a black leather jacket with metal spikes on the shoulders and black pants with black leather boots. He had straight blonde hair that went down to his ears. It's not nice to just attack someone like that. You could have just said it, Naruto said. The devil looked closely at Naruto and could sense a sacred gear on him. His experience also told him that he was strong. He had already fought many battles and had gained a lot of combat experience. Time he could tell if someone strong was standing in front of you. High in the air, camouflaged by magic, were Rias and Graphia. Somehow the devil looks familiar to me, Rias said, trying to remember where she knew this devil from. It was immediately clear that he was from the Phoenix clan, the same clan that wanted to force her to marry in the first place. However, she was able to prevent the marriage with the help of her best friend. It was a tough rating game, but in the end, Rias won against the bastard who wanted to make her his wife and plaything. She was really happy to have her peerage. Without it she would never have been able to prevent the planned marriage to Riser Phoenix. Graphia could clearly see the devil from the Phoenix clan, even though they were so high in the air. She was currently the one disguising herself and Rias with some illusion magic. She wasn't known as the strongest queen in hell for nothing. She was the personal maid of the Grimoire family and also the queen of Searsex Lucifer, the reigning Satan. Her strength was at the level of a Satan and even ultimate class devils respected her. Graphia was a beautiful young woman appearing to be in her early 20s with back-length silver hair that features a long braid on each side with small blue bows at the ends, while the rest is let down which ends in twin braids and silver eyes. Like most female devils, she also had a curvy figure with massive breasts. She was wearing a blue and white French-made outfit with long sleeves and a white-made headband over her head with red lipstick as a cosmetic accessory. This is Tatsuya Phoenix, Graphia said. She would always recognize this member of the Phoenix clan. After all, she was there when it happened, and she saw the consequences of what happened to him. Rias looked at Graphia. Who was that? I've never seen this devil before. This is Tatsuya Phoenix. He had committed a great crime 150 years ago and as result he was banished from the Phoenix clan and spent 120 years in a prison made of ice that could not be broken, Graphia explained. What had he done? That is not so important. The only important thing is that he has never been seen again since he disappeared from the ice prison 30 years ago. Many thought he was dead, Graphia said. She raised her hand and immediately after, a silver magic circle appeared over her hand. After a few seconds, a hologram of a man with long red hair appeared above the silver magic circle. Rias immediately recognized her big brother and wondered why. Graphia was already contacting her big brother. Graphia, is everything okay? I wasn't expecting you to get in touch until tomorrow, Sirzek said. He himself didn't saw Rias, just Graphia. Sirzek HS was a handsome man who seems to be in his early 20s. He had shoulder-length crimson hair and blue-green eyes. He wore his normal Satan attire. Sorry to bother you, Sirzek Sama. But I have very urgent information that you should know, Graphia said in a serious voice. Sirzek recognized the voice immediately and got a serious expression on his face. He could be very stubborn at Tim's and overprotective when it came to his little sister. But he knew when to get serious, and now was such a moment. Tatsuya Phoenix has appeared again. Graphia explained the situation with Naruto Uzumaki, Sayuri, the fallen angels, and that Tatsuya Shiba had just appeared. Sirzek listened carefully, becoming more serious the more he heard. Good job, Graphia. I'll leave it up to you how you'll handle the situation. However, I don't want Tatsuya Phoenix to come anywhere near my sister and her peerage. He is too dangerous and too strong for my sister and her peerage, said Sirzek. When the matter is settled, get back to us straight away. I will contact the Phoenix house and explain everything to them. They'll want to know what happened to Tatsuya Phoenix. Sirzek said. Of course, Sirzek Sama. I'll take care of the matter. Graphia said. Sirzek's hologram disappeared, and so did the silver magic circle above Graphia's hand. Rias was about to say omething when a red magic circle suddenly appeared next to her right ear. Rias, I have to warn you. Valley's voice came from the magic circle. Rias looked to her right ear and asked, what's wrong, Valley? Were there any problems with the fallen angels? No, I just spoke to Albion. He informed me about the sacred gear that Naruto Uzumaki possesses. He recognized the aura of the spirit resided in Naruto Uzumaki's sacred gear. It is the sacred gear flowing flame blade. It has the power to control fire, which turns everything to ash. Graphia's eyes widened when she heard the name of the sacred gear. Not many knew about this sacred gear. It had only appeared a few times in the past. The last time it was in the hands of an old man who lived for 500 years because of certain things. He was feared by everyone because he had this powerful sacred gear. Nobody knew where it came from. It was not a sacred gear officially created by the God of the Bible. It has often been speculated that there were other beings besides the God of the Bible who could create sacred gears. But that was all just speculation so far. The sacred gear flowing flame blade was the only thing that confirmed this theory. Valley doesn't have to say anything else. I know now, said Graphia. She had only once remotely felt the effects of Naruto's sacred gear's balance break. This experience alone was enough to know how dangerous this sacred gear was. All right, I heard everything. I just wanted to warn you, Valley said before the magic circle on Rias' right ear disappeared. Rias looked at Graphia and saw her serious expression. She was much more serious than before. Even when she reported on Tatsuya, she was still relatively neutral and professional. Now her eyes seemed serious and even a little worried. Graphia, what's so dangerous about the sacred gear? A Phoenix can also control fire, and even I can create fire with magic. So, what makes this sacred gear so dangerous? Asked Rias. Graphia looked at Rias. That's not so important now. If Naruto Uzumaki really uses the balance break from his sacred gear, we need to create a barrier around the area where he and Tatsuya Phoenix are. Otherwise, Kuo would be destroyed and every living thing in Kuo would be in danger. Graphia said. Rias' eyes widened and she looked down at the ground. Naruto Uzumaki. He was becoming more and more mysterious. First, she learned about his holy power, and now she learned about his powerful sacred gear. Why had such a strong man done nothing against her and her peerage? She just didn't understand. Until now he was simply a young successful writer with an attractive appearance. But now he was one of the most dangerous human that could possibly exist for devils. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.